Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Monsters Den. It is Secret Satan Grab Bag Challenge once again in anticipation of the holidays. We try to do this at least twice a year, and we usually do it. What do we do it in Valentine's Day earlier this year, guys? Is that when we did it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was
Grand
this
final.
year.
Yeah, we
I
did.
don't
We did
think we
this is the second one we did this year, right? Or no?
I don't
No.
know. I don't think we did one
Really?
this year.
I think so.
No? Okay. Well,
No.
maybe we haven't done it since last holiday season. All right. Well, whatever. We're all being Grinches and we didn't decide not to do it this year. So, yeah, well, hey, at least we're doing it now. So, for those of you who have not seen any of the past episodes of this, basically how it works is that we've got George Lemay in the house from
Woohoo!
in the Prague seat. And George has been the MC of these last few episodes that we've done, the Secret Satan episodes. And basically, it's just kind of like having a Secret Santa at like your office Christmas party or something, right? Everybody gets a name of someone and you would give them like a secret gift and they'd have to try and guess who it came from. Well, kind of similar here, right? So everybody's got their Secret Satan who has been selected, one of the other members of the panel. They get to offer them up a movie that they haven't seen before. That usually means presenting a short list of films. The person picks one they haven't seen, they watch it. We come on here, we talk a little bit about the film, what we thought, did we like it, did we not like it? And at the end of the episode, we all try to guess who our Secret Satan was. And, we've all been working with each other for a long time. I think we, for the most part, kind of know what we all like and what we might suggest, or maybe not. That's kind of the fun thing. So with that, I'll turn it over to, let me introduce the panel first before we go. So George Lemay is going to be running the show here tonight. We got Craig Kaminsky in the house. Dan Brown is in the house. Our center square is Davey Gallagher, all the way from Scotland, looking very festive there. We got Chris Allo here in that wonderful Heaven and Hell Black Sabbath t-shirt in anticipation of something else that's upcoming on the channel. And, of course, Mary Rickmas.
Rick and Morty.
Yep.
Oh.
There you go. Jamie
That
Lazo.
was Rick Bonnie.
What's going on? So with all that being said, let's get the festivities started here. I'll turn it over to George. George, take it away.
All right. Why don't we kick it off with Center Square? Davey, what was the film you chose?
So my film, the three that were selected, I hadn't seen two of them, but this one stood out as the one they needed to go for because it squares a circle that's been needing to be tackled for 30 odd years. Because I remember seeing this film on trailers. It's a full moon film, and it wasn't released for a few years afterwards, and then kind of fell into obscurity. It's 1993's Arcade, starring the biggest star now in it would be Seth Green, probably for modern audiences, but Peter, what's his name from A Christmas Story, Peter Billingsley. He's in it. It's really weird seeing him as a teenager after seeing him in The Christmas Story only, really. And other Q from Star Trek, John Delancey, is in there as well, right? So a bit of an all-star cast for genre, and not like the cousins from Home Alone fame, or that's an inside cut for Chris. But the director is Albert Pune, who directed a billion B movies in the 80s and 90s. And I was quite excited to see it because, again, I'd seen it must have been the VHS trailer reel on Demonic Toys or something like that from Full Moon back in the 90s. So after waiting 30 years, it's one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. It's an embarrassment. It's terrible. It's shonky. It's junky. It's janky. It's jinky. It's all sorts. It's absolutely disgraceful. And I loved every minute of it. And I bought the DVD.
Wow.
Because it's everything that I love in a good bad movie. It's essentially it's called Arcade, right? And it's not really about an arcade at all. There's an arcade in it, but it's not about an arcade. They just had that title. A bunch of kids get taken to the local arcade, Dante's Inferno, and Q from Star Trek says, "Why don't you come in here? It's a bit virtual reality, like the holodeck or something, and you'll love it. because you're kids and kids love video games. And wouldn't you know who won the pony? Straight away, first thing that happens is the first kid that goes in it disappears. This machine is somehow stealing the kids' souls, stealing them physically as well. They actually vanish. And that seems like a reasonable premise, just a basic man against machine. The machine's kind of sentient. It's virtual reality, so there's a bit of artificial intelligence going on there. But it's got the budget of, I don't know, and there's a reason for the budget being so low. But you can imagine a filming budget anyway, right? And this film got sued by Disney for stealing special effects from Tron, because they had a section in it that was going to have light bikes, and then so they had to go back and reshoot all the special effects stuff. So Charles Band, not noted for wanting to spend a lot of money on his productions anyway. You can imagine how cheap his workaround version would be. So they redone special effects in this virtual world called Arcade. The game's called Arcade. You can imagine how cheap they are. They are not even PlayStation 1 standard, but the behind-the-scenes stuff on the... you get from the video, I think we call the video zone you used to get on film and VHSs.
Yeah. And movie, right?
Yeah, you get that here. It's replicated here. And they're talking about it as if they've come up with this great new SFX, this amazing new CGI. And this is 10 years after Tron, and it looks 100 times worse. This is worse than The Lawnmower Man. This is worse than that TV show Reboot. It is absolutely awful CG, but it's so charming at the same time. It is so charming. They're selling it as if it's the greatest thing ever, when it is basically just Peter Billingsley, Megan Ward, who would go into Baywatch, and a couple other kids in spandex and a bicycle helmet, one just standing still against a green screen, pretending they're on skateboard, avoiding traps. It's 50 minutes of just panicking about where our friend's gone, what's going on with this machine, let's go investigate.
You say 50 minutes, so it's not even an hour long?
No, it's 50 minutes of that, and then 40 minutes of actually going into the game itself. Right. But the whole thing's got this wonderful, wonderful B-movie feel, where you can tell it was filmed just in and around the building that Charles Band operated from, where they're just shining bright lights in the background to try and cover up things. And John Delancey says "mind the door" at one point. It feels like he's saying that because the whole set's just going to fall down if anybody touches even one tiny bit of it. It's brilliantly low budget. It's got the most wonderful, and I don't know if I can recommend it to anybody who's not of that generation who really loved really bad early CG. This came out after Jurassic Park, and it looks like the cut scenes from a Sega Genesis game or a Mega Drive game. It's wonderfully fun, but it's really dark as well. It starts with Megan Ward waking up and remembering her mother's suicide, and you get to see her mother shooting herself in the head twice in the movie, and then a scene with her mother saying, "Don't worry, heaven's nice."
At first, I thought Davey said you see the mother shit herself. I'm like, oh man, this movie is fucking dark.
Maybe they say that happens at the point of death, don't they? I've never seen it happen. But the mother goes to shoot the daughter in the head as well, and there's loads of video game cliches tied in there, and there's a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street kind of vibes to it as well. There's a lot of Tron, obviously. It's one big Charles Band. What's popular? What's been popular? Let's try and rip it all off. Oops, Disney have caught onto it. We have to refilm half the movie, and we've got absolutely no budget to do it, which makes it all the more charming. So I can't recommend it for any kind of reason other than low budget, bad, good movie charm. And everything is as 90s as can be. Everybody's wearing plaid shirts over t-shirts and go, "Whoa, dude, bodacious to the max," and everything's extreme. It's fantastic. Yeah, it took me right back. It's arcade, and it's written by David S. Goyer, who would go on to write The Dark Knight, for goodness sake. I suggest that he started low down the totem pole, but he climbed eventually. But he did also write Batman versus Superman, so maybe this is his peak, to be honest. I don't know. But yeah, it's crap, but it's crap of the highest order.
All right.
Bad movie,
full moon stuff
good
is kind of fun.
night for friends. Stick it on, yeah. For a bad movie night, highly recommended stuff. This was a treat. So, Arcade from 1993.
All right, cool.
Are we saying who I think it was now, or are we going for that at the end?
At the end, yeah, we'll do it at the end.
Okay.
I'm sold.
Yeah, it's fun.
I got to track a copy down, Davey. That sounds pretty good.
Let's go to Craig. What do you got?
All right. Well, I fire up my thingy here for visual.
Oh,
So I had
had
out of my 3 movies that I had to choose from, I had not seen any of them. So the first one I picked, I couldn't watch on my TV. I could only watch it on my phone. I didn't feel like doing that. The second one wasn't subtitled in English, and I'm kind of particular, so I chose the third one, and that was open. This from 2002. This is Sylvester Stallone starring in ICU. It's also known as Detox. I never knew.
I remember Detox.
I didn't know that. I've only ever seen this listed as ICU. I wasn't familiar with the alternate title. The director is Jim Gillespie. He also directed I Know What You Did Last Summer. And the one thing that I mean, I'm not a huge Stallone fan. I mean, I kind of like the ones that most people like. Like Oscar and Rhinestone and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. The good ones of Sylvester Stallone. I don't even know what the other ones that he did was. But anyway, but the one thing that I noticed when I fired this up was that the cast is stacked. I mean, there is a really I mean, while the names are going by, sometimes it's like, well, you might recognize a couple of people. This is deep. I mean, I'll read you these. Obviously, Sylvester Stallone. We got Tom Berenger, Chris Christopherson, Polly Walker, who was smoking hot in Rome on HBO. This is a couple of years before that. Unfortunately, she's not naked in this like she was in Rome, but she still looks pretty good in that. Jeffrey Wright, Charles S. Dutton, Robert Patrick, Dina Meyer plays Stallone's wife. She was in Starship Troopers. She played Diz. Sean Patrick Flannery, young Indiana Jones himself. Stephen Lang, Courtney B. Vance, Robert Prosky, and blink if you miss him, and you'll miss him, Rance Howard, Ron Howard's old man in the movie. So there's a stacked, I mean, while this was going by, it's like, wow, this is, a lot of well-known people. And one thing I had also read about this movie is that it was a notorious bomb. It had a budget of about 55 million, and it did less than 7 at the box office at the time. And according to what I read, it was one of those where it was a victim of many reshoots and test audiences not liking certain parts and having to redo it. To my understanding, the ending of the movie had to be completely redone because test audiences didn't like it. So as a result, the movie is a little bit of a mess. So in a nutshell, Stallone plays an FBI agent tracking a serial killer who is going around killing other cops or police officers or cops and such. He's out drinking one night with a whole bunch of other of his friends, and one of them, of course, gets brutally killed. Now it's called ICUEYE because at least a couple times in the movie they don't the the killer like knocks on a person's door, and they go to look through the peephole, and he like has a drill right through the peephole into the poor guy's eye. And this happens at least a couple times in the movie. But Stallone's wife, who, you know, again played by Dina Meyer, is, and I'm not, you know, spoiler alert, but I mean, but it's like she's barely in the movie, and she's killed, and Stallone is obviously shaken up by this, and so he checks himself into a sort of policeman rehab clinic that is in Wyoming, of all places, and in the middle of a dense winter. So it's almost like the Thing in 1982. I mean, snow everywhere. And when he gets there, most of the other people that I had mentioned are fellow police officers who were also there for some sort of trying to get over some sort of work-related trauma that they have. I mean, Jeffrey Wright's character, I believe, tried to kill himself, and Polly Walker plays the physician that's on hand. Chris Christopherson is actually the psychiatrist who's in charge of everyone, which is kind of weird. Tom Berenger is like the janitor. I mean, it was just kind of strange. I mean, usually you'd see a cast like this if it's in a tropical setting or something, that they would get a free vacation out of it or something, but not in this case. So, of course, some of these people start getting killed one by one, and hey, it's Stallone's stalker killer has followed him to Wyoming and the snow to bump off some of these other people, and then of course come down to him. And you don't know who the killer is until, you know, towards the end. And so there are some confusing parts. I kind of wanted to like it more because of, you know, the subject matter was at least, you know, kept me going, but the plot wise, it was just kind of all over the place with what was going on. And I mean, once you get to the end and the cast is whittled down a little bit, I mean, at the end of the movie, after Stallone dispatches the killer, he and I think it's he and two other characters leave. You know, they leave and the facility. That's the end of the movie. But then it was I was thinking, it's like, well, wait, all the other characters weren't killed, you know. And then I actually even rewound, and I went back, and it's like, wait, Courtney B. Vance, and there was another female police officer who was in there, and that was a plot hole that was just left go, because the last scene that it shows of them is they're kind of like have their guns out, and they're saying, okay, if anybody comes through that door, you shoot them. And then you never see them again. And at the end of the movie, it's completely unresolved. It's like they left them in the snow. So I mean, it's got some wacky parts like that in it. And like I said, I wanted to like it a little bit more than what I did, but it's not, you know, an abomination to your eyesight. It's not that awful, but it's not, considering who's in it. I had my hopes up a little bit more for it, but I can understand why it bombed so badly. I think with maybe with all of these different reshoots going back and forth, that the story kind of got lost in the mix and everything. It's based on a novel that came out in 1999, which is about when the movie was shot, but just kind of a mess. And I think at the time period, this was when Stallone was really starting to take a downward trend, until he had to resurrect Rocky and Rambo and to try and do something with his career, because I think he had quite a few bombs in a row from the late 90s up through probably 2006 or so, when Rocky Balboa came out. So but anyway, you know, like I said, not awful, but I had my hopes up a little bit higher for ICU.
I've never heard it called ICU. I've only ever known it as Detox. So
Yeah,
it must have been.
Yeah, I've never not seen it.
Never heard of
as
either
this.
one.
Yeah,
Ah,
because you're right. It came out just before Driven, and that was another massive bomb.
yeah, that I think was the year before, right?
His
2001?
Formula One kind of movie.
Formula
or
One
something.
Oh,
racing.
right
yeah.
after Get Carter.
Yes, which Christ, who should we get to replace Michael Caine? Stallone. Fucking tuck.
Oh,
Michael Caine was in
the movie though, so
Yeah, he should have just made a Stop or My Mom Will Really Shoot. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a sequel. I mean, but you know,
Rhinestone 2, come on, writes itself.
yeah.
All right. What about you, Chris? What'd you get?
Okay, my pick. I got 3 movies to pick from. One of them I already like and own. One of them I was a new one, relatively new, and so I chose 1988's American Gothic. I had a bit of a history with this one because I definitely remember renting it on VHS in the late 80s, but not watching it. I don't know if I got busy or whatever. And then in the early 90s, I was a huge tape trader, both on VHS and audio cassette. And in the early 90s, I had like 6 VCRs all wired together. I could make multiple copies. And I traded all sorts of stuff. And I absolutely got a VHS dub of American Gothic in my collection like 30 years ago. Wouldn't you know it? I never watched it. So when this came up on the list, I was like, oh, I'll finally watch it. And it's not great. For those not familiar with the story, it stars three famous faces: Michael J. Pollard, Yvonne DiCarlo from the Munsters, and Rod Steiger. And it's basically a riff on better movies we've already seen, like Mother's Day, and The Hills Have Eyes, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Basically, a bunch of young people get stuck in the woods, and they come across a family of backwards hick people. And wouldn't you know it, one by one, the hick people welcome them in, and then one by one kill them off. Shocker, I know. I think the most interesting thing about this movie, though, the thing that really gives it a twist, is that the young people that they murder are absolutely fucking obnoxious. Like they stumble across this house, and it's a clean looking house, and they're looking for help, but nobody's there. So what do? They start like playing records in their house and going through their closets and knocking shit over and making a mess. And then the weird family comes home and they're like all apologizing. I'm like, seriously? And then they feed them, and then after dinner, one of the broads just lights up a cigarette in the middle of the house, and just stuff where you're like, yeah, fucking kill these people already. But the difference between this and, say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Hills Have Eyes is, the anti-heroes are still somewhat likable, like Leatherface or the Hitchhiker or Pluto from The Hills Have Eyes. And this, man, the villains or the anti-heroes, they suck too. Like, I literally said out loud, like, who the fuck am I supposed to root for? Because I hate everybody in this movie. I want them all to die. Long story short, they all get killed off, and then there's a final girl, and she gets her revenge. But it's definitely backloaded. It takes fucking forever to, get for her to, hurry up and get your revenge and kill off the weird family. The guy that made this made a couple classics. He made Twins of Evil, which I love, one of Peter Cushing's best. The Legend of Hill House, Hell House, with Roddy McDowall, Incubus from 1982. But man, this one was definitely not nearly as good as any of those. It didn't completely suck. I was glad that I finally was able to see it, but at the same time, I'm like, oof, I will never watch this again. So that's my review. It definitely could have been worse, but it could have been a lot better.
All right. Jamie, what about you?
All right. I was given a list of 3 movies, and I Googled them, and I went with the one with the best Rotten Tomato score. So I went with The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, probably a movie most of you have seen, if not all of you. It's also called Sleeping Corpses Lie, Don't Open the Window, and about 15 other titles. I believe it's an Italian movie. I've seen the poster for this movie before, but I don't know if I've seen the poster because of the movie or if it was on Electric Wizard, the band's merchandise. I can't tell because the band Electric Wizard, they're fans of the movie. They use a dialogue from the movie and one of their songs called Wizard in Black, and it's on like t-shirts and posters and stuff. And then metal bands are down with this movie because a band called Carcass has a song called Living Dead at Manchester Morgue. So I went into it pretty blind, and I gotta tell you, I really liked it, as you probably, all you guys really like it. It starts off reminiscent of Night of the Living Dead. You got two people pulling over, car, zombie coming out of the distance. But I do like how they explain how the zombies come into existence with the bug killing machine. And I love the guys working on the bug killing machine. They go, "No harsh chemicals here. This is safe. Just safe radiation." But what the radiation's doing is it's affecting the nervous system of babies because, you know, it's not developed all the way. And according to this movie, when you're dead, your nervous system is weak but still active. And the radiation from the bug killing machine is activating the dead people's nervous system. And you know what? I didn't go, "That's ridiculous," when I watched it. I said, I'm down with it. I'll roll with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. And I gotta tell you, this movie has a lot of tension, a lot of suspense. You know, when they're in the mausoleum trying to get out and they're crawling through the crypt. It's gory as hell. This is a 1974 movie, and you got a guy's chest being ripped open, you got organs being eaten, you got a woman's blouse being torn open, her boob ripped from her body and eaten. In 1974, they're showing this. So I was very surprised with that. And I was thinking this movie sits nicely between Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead with its gore factor. Gorier than Night, not quite as gory as Dawn. So it sits in that pocket right there in the middle. Really nice. And it's got a cool downer kind of a ending for our heroes. But then justice is kind of served in a way that reminded me of the Creep Show episode with Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen a little bit. How Leslie gets it at the end. So yeah, I really dug it. In my movie diary, you know, 3 stars are for good movies and for kind of bad movies that are still kind of good. 3.5 stars is kind of hard to get for me, and 4 and 5 are reserved for the special ones. I give this 3.5, which is my book and kind of hard to get. So I really dug it. I think I want to buy it. And yeah, that's all I got to say. I won't say who gave it to me yet. We'll save that to the end. So I'm sure all you guys have seen it more than once.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it in Japan in 1974.
Wow.
In a theater under the name, and I'd never seen it in the United States, and it played in Japan under the name of Don't Open the Window. And I came back and I would tell people about this all the time. And I could not find, because it had, as Jamie said, had like 3 different names. And yeah, it's a favorite of mine. I think Chris is very high on Chris's list as well.
Yeah, I would have given it 4 stars, but I don't have a Jamie book. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I
Do
mean,
you give 5 though? Do you give 5 stars?
It'd be up there for a 5 in a zombie, for the zombie genre. It's a masterpiece for me. Yeah, I'd say it's up there.
I can see me liking it more and more if I view it more.
Do you know what always stuck with me? The eyes, you know, the yellow red eyes that they have. That really, they've got great. Every zombie needs some kind of iconography, and that has those eyes, those contact lenses that are yellow and red,
which comes in handy at the end.
Yeah, looks tremendous.
You know, a useless bit of trivia with this, it was the Koreans. They make some very interesting, you know, zombie films and horror films as of late. Somebody in Korea made a remake of this. It's not very good.
Really?
I can't remember the name. I'll have to get the name and send it to everybody. I have it somewhere.
That's interesting.
But the
David.
Koreans actually made a remake. It follows it slightly, and it's not that good. I was like, wow, it's a remake of that. That's pretty wild, but it's not classic Korean horror. So
While Jamie was talking about it, I'm like, I'm surprised nobody's made a remake of this. It would probably suck, but
these hippies with their
it.
drug smoking and free sex. What Arthur Kennedy says, the cop.
Right.
Yeah.
You hippies.
The long-haired
That's the part
Yeah,
in
you
the
long-haired
Electric Wizard song.
Chris, check your levels on your mic. You're really low.
Okay.
Jamie's had Quatermass in the Pit, and now he's got Living Dead, the
Yeah, and all the
Manchester Morgue.
classics.
He gets all the classics. We're left with this fucking
You're gonna
shit.
buy it, Jamie. Buy what's that? Synapse is the last one that came out.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
one.
the Steelbook is
Steelbook,
gorgeous.
What was
three
the
discs.
title?
Yeah,
What was the title of that again, Jamie?
Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue.
Okay.
Came out on Anchor Bay as Let Sleeping Corpses Lie.
Yeah.
Back in the
Okay.
I mean, Manchester Morgue's not a great title, but it's just such a great film that people kind of accept. I don't think it's actually a very good title anyway.
The poster is cool, though.
Poster's cool.
I can see why they use it for merchandise.
All right, Dan, what about you?
All right. Well, I was given 3 films. I've seen none of them. But the one I did pick was based on the fact that I remember this image from the box, the VHS box, seeing it all the time. And that is, you see it, Sylus. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Sylus. And let me tell you something. As opposed to like with the I See You with Craig, where you have this killer lineup of people. Okay, there's about 25 people listed in the credits in the beginning. Nobody I have ever recognized. Some of the names even sound like somebody that wants to change their name if they made a porno film and they want to be a John Smithy. They don't want their name associated with it. So bad. The film is inept. It's insane. Not insane like in horror-wise, but the gist of it is in the beginning of the film, there's these 2 young kids living in Venice, California. It takes place in Venice, near the canals of Venice. If anybody's familiar with Venice, California, it's called Venice because there was a series of canals there in the 1800s going up to the 1980s. That's how they traveled around. Over the years, they closed them down, and they finally kept a few, and they turned them into a historic landmark in the early 1980s. Well, this film came out in 77. So we're catching this place like it'd be like making a film in Times Square before they Disneyfied it. Everything was just falling apart. That was more entertaining, but it was falling apart. So these 2 kids are walking. They stumble upon the 2 eviscerated dogs near the canal. And the kids, there's no acting. All the kid actors have a vapid look on their face that basically leaves non-intelligent children of the damned. They just act like wooden things. So you go into, and he's not a reporter. He is a journalism teacher at the high school. He has been reading about these dog killings. Are they sacrifices in this? And he's decided to take it upon himself to find out what's going on. And once again, this guy, he looks like the love child if it were Robert Reed and Tom Jones with this post-fog hat, no mullet, pre-Tony Manero or Tony from Saturday Night Live disco haircut. That's 70s stuff. The film reeks of the 70s. The sets are tacky in the 70s. Then I think back, I waxed nostalgic and said, well, yeah, the fucking 70s were tacky. I mean, anything from corner lamps to like shag carpeting to like god-awful vests. And so he goes off and he goes to a murder scene. He walks into the murder scene. It's been reported that morning. It was told to him by his students. It's been there all day. He just walks into it in this apartment where these people were murdered. There's blood all over the place. It's not coagulated. He's farting about. He picks up some blood and mud, puts it in a test tube, and a cop comes in, throws him against the wall. And meanwhile, the cop is coughing all the time. And he's got a cold. And he's going to arrest this teacher for, this guy for trespassing in a murder scene. And he goes, you can't come in here. And he says, well, I have identification. And he has it's like his library card and a credit card, Diners Club card. It's like, what the fuck does this have to do with this? So he sits there and the cop is coughing all the time. He goes, you feel okay? The Cop goes, it's cold. So he literally buys the guy off for the cop to let him play around the crime scene by giving him a eucalyptus lozenge, in which he refers to it as such. And the guy like spills the beans, let him look around, let him do this, that, the other. And that's why instead of saying like, oh, that $100 on the floor, Officer Bill, did you drop that? No, no, he buys him off with a lozenge. Now we go and we're going to meet. I have to read some of the inane dialogue of this. We meet, his name is Dr. John, and not to be confused with the New Orleans musician. This guy, once again, kind of a nebbish. Okay, he's explaining about what this is going on. When he brings him the sample of the mud, he tests it. And he comes back and he says, I thought it was a protoplasmic, but in reality, it is ectoplasmic. This stuff intrigues me, though. It's like, do you call the Ghostbusters? Do you call Egon? Who do you do to the ectoplasm? Now he goes even further. He goes, 20 years ago in a nuclear training facility near Lake Sherman, Wisconsin, leaking radioactive material and infinitesimal like the power plant 2 miles down the coast from us. Okay, what's the point of this? Then he goes even further. So Wayne Connors, the reporter or the journalist teacher, says, what does that have to do with the mud I found? The doctor answers, Way, stay with me. This is only the first part of a 2-part story. And he starts explaining. He goes, there was a second report that stayed damn near hidden and was virtually unread. The effects on a stagnant lagoon leaked into the silt, combining with algae, bacteria, and advanced primitive life. What the fuck advanced primitive life is? I have no idea. Is that like sea monkeys that play to do Sudoku puzzles? I don't know what it is, right? Primitive life forms evolve into a form of protoplasm, taking on the characteristics of what was absorbed, mutating into something totally different. And that's when I realized, holy shit, it's the Thing. And this is 5 years before John Carpenter. John Carpenter has some explaining to do about his plot now. Now, the professors that worked on it called it Slythus, the monster. Now, the reporter's girlfriend, who's sitting in the room with them, who seemed to be getting turned on by the whole thing about Slythus, sits there and says to the doctor, she goes, why did they call it Slythus? And she responds, well, why did your mother call you Jet? That's her name. It's like, okay, that's right out of the MIT handbook. I mean, this is, but boy. And then the Dr. John explains how a Dr. Alan Bird overdosed on radiation, now in Alabama. It's all over the fucking place. Now, we don't hear about Dr. Alan Bird ever again until they go and they find out they visit a Dr. Branford. Now, maybe it's screwed up in the script. He's living in like a biodome house that's covered with canvas. And you go in, I swear to God, there's like these stairs going down like from an A-frame building, and he's standing in the shadows in the top, talking in a very deep, slow, like Orson Welles doing a wine commercial. And he's walking down the steps in the shadows, and he's holding a glass of wine. He comes finally into light, and you see half of his face looks like it's been left over from a cream pie fight or oatmeal on it. And that's where he got burned. And he explains the very deep, like a bad turtleneck, bad used car salesman checkered jacket. And he explains how you have to go to the source of the radiation. So what does our reporter do? He goes and he hires a black sea captain by the name of, what the fuck was his name? Captain Chris Alexander. Captain Chris Alexander takes him in a boat. Now, there are more fishing boats here in the Venice Canal than there are off of Amityville in Jaws. They're all over the place. And he goes down to the radioactive plant, which doesn't look like a radioactive plant. And he's diving and he brings up more and more samples. Nothing's really happening. So then he realizes what they have to do, in addition with the professor or Dr. John, right? After he's come off tour with the Neville brothers, he sits there and he goes, what we have to do is you have to shut the water off in the canal, close the canal, the lock, right? So they go there, they go to the place. There's like 4 There's 4 fences, 4 gates. And he goes, that's going to be pretty hard to get in here. How are we going to get in? The doctor pulls out a key. He goes, I have a key. Where did you get that? It took one phone call. A friend of mine from the local Oceanographic Institute, which now I'm finally happy I realized it is in Venice, California, gave him this key. They just go, they shut the lock. So what does it do? The water does not come through. Okay, now the monster's pissed off. So now he's coming online. They pissed him off. Now he's killing more people. And he's killing homeless people and winos and everybody that dies. I mean, there's a guy trying to pick up a girl who admits she's 18 years old, and he's trying to bring her home and say, hey, you look awfully tight. It's driving him in the car, and it's just fucking nuts. It's inane. And finally, sorry, I just can't. I had to watch this 3 times to write some of this dialogue down.
3 times.
I wish I had like a stenographer to do this shit. I swear. I was sitting there with my jaw open. What was it? He goes, okay, so yeah, it's just weird. So anyhow, now that's not the insane shit that happens. The insane shit that happens aside, going into the house where the murder scene, right? He goes to the police station. Now, once again, the police chief seems to be the love child of Ron Jeremy, an older Ron Jeremy, and an older, what's his name? Ron Howard's brother, the crazy one that played Ice Cream Man, right? He looks like He's got long hair. He's sitting there, and meanwhile, the professor sits here and goes, we shut the lock off, which is like a federal offense in the water, and the police chief doesn't even blink an eye with that. And then they bring another doctor in who they don't identify, who's explaining some more scientific shit, and I'm like, what is happening with this? So eventually he goes out with Captain Carl or Captain Chris, whatever his name was, on the boat, like in a Jaws type thing.
Captain Chris Allo.
Yeah, and
That's what I heard as well.
The monster comes on board. It tell you something. I have never been so entertained in a dirty sort of way. I swear. I was watching, I embraced this thing. I listened to the dialogue. I could not believe the dialogue. I mean, Ed Wood is sitting up in heaven now going like, believe this shit? They blame me, and it's nuts. Nobody was in the cast, and now, and I'm not gonna tell you how it ends. I mean, it's just insane. You gotta watch every little innuendo of this thing. Now, the only thing that's even worth half its weight in gold is the monster suit. It's a rubber monster suit. It actually looks pretty good, okay, in the shadows, okay? There's one scene where it's fairly well lit. If anybody has ever seen this film called Masters of the Universe about the caveman, you ever see that, Chris? The Italian film?
They show Masters of the Universe?
Yeah, is it Masters? Masters of...
Isn't that He-Man?
Not He-Man. It's Masters of... Oh, God. Anyhow, it's an Italian caveman movie in which they show footage of this huge bear. And then when the caveman is wrestling with the bear, it's obviously a man in a costume, and he's got like a Velcro zipper on the back.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just insane. But I loved it. I just watched it, and it's a hoot. But most of the budget, however, went into the costume. And one of the more funny things about the costume is that the guy had to be here in Venice, California, there was no zipper on the suit. So when they started shooting in the beginning of the day, they would sew the guy into the suit. And, he couldn't take it off the whole day, to the point where they're eventually going to call us like Shittus instead of Slithus. He hits himself. I mean, just wild. But anyhow, fun time. It came out on Red Code Red Video. It's
hold
there.
That, Dan, hold that up again so people can see the suit.
It's on. It's on. I believe I caught it on. I think Freevee or YouTube. It's on there. But I tell you something. I watched this when I was given these titles, and I just had to seek a copy out because you could actually do like a college dissertation about this film. Now, the only character that came out of this film with any type of notoriety in the future is the guy that plays Dr. John. And I started looking into him, and he apparently is some kind of an iconic voiceover artist. He fell in love with Japan. He lives in Japan and the US, and he does a lot of voiceover work for anime. And he's a big star in Japan. Obviously they have not seen Slithus yet. that may change. But it was
After this
was
review,
fun.
yeah.
Huh?
After this review, for sure.
Oh yeah, no, it was fun, and I said I saw this thing in VHS boxes back in the '70s, like and then all of a sudden somebody. That's what I love about the show. It gives me an excuse to like with Chris, with 30 years I had it on videotaped, and all of a sudden when we did another one, Alien Avenger, I had that VHS for like 25 years. And I've seen this somewhere. Oh shit, it's in my basement. So anyhow, Slithis, I liked it. I think it's worth a watch. But you have to watch it and listen to the dialogue and just to understand how inept it is.
I have that on Blu-ray, and I know I've watched it. I don't remember, other than the monster, I don't remember anything else about it. So I have to go rewatch it again, especially after hearing all that. I'm like,
I was listening. I said, did they just say? I'm trying to follow what he's saying. I'm going, that makes no sense.
I feel like I know less about it now than I did at the start.
Dan, I guess you went to a lot of my Hudson Horrors. That was one of my mystery movies. I guess you missed it.
I don't know if I saw the Sylus there. God, geez, I loved it. Well, you saw the stuff I've been transferring on VHS. I'm game for anything, the weird stuff I have. So,
Pete, let's hear about yours.
all right, so I also was given a choice of 3 films, and God, if memory serves me correctly, I don't believe I saw any of the 3. So I picked the one that I've heard about but never watched before. So that was 2009's House of the Wolfman. So I know you can't really see it all too well there, but basically this film is a complete homage to the old Universal House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, all those kind of films. It was written and directed by a guy named Eben Megar. Don't know who he is, really. I don't think he's done anything else before. A cast of nobodies, with the exception of a guy who has a last name. He comes from a family who were somebodies, but him himself, I don't think he's anybody. Ron Chaney was the great-grandson and grandson of Lon Chaney Jr. So that's kind of, they figure, I guess Eben Megar, who wrote and directed this, is a huge Universal fan. And I guess as the story goes, he loves the old Universal monster movies, but was always kind of torn up that they never kind of continued them, and we never got a House of the Wolfman. House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein. What about House of the Wolfman? So let's make a movie in 2009 that will hopefully remind people of how much they love those old Universal horror films. So shoots it in black and white, set in an old, like, kind of creepy mad scientist house. And of course you got all the monsters there. You got the Wolfman, Frankenstein, and Dracula. You got a witch there. You got some kind of like vampirous, Dracula's female minion vampires, whatever. So the basic story is you've got this kind of mad scientist guy. His name is Dr. Bela Reinhardt, and that's Ron Chaney. Of course, they give him a name, Bela. Those of you who are big on the Universal horror films, you should know Bela Lugosi, right? But wasn't there a character named Bela in one of the old Universal horror classics? Yes, there was. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, he is a crazy mad doctor guy, and that's Ron Chaney. He calls all these people to stay at his house. He's wants to kind of come up with an heir to his estate. So he basically invites them all to his house to see, who is going to be the heir to his fortunes, and then sets up this kind of like whole kind of most dangerous game type of thing, right? It's like going to be a competition to see who wins the the rights to the house and the estate and whatnot. And as it kind of goes along, the people who he invited over are all idiots, basically. The acting is absolutely horrible. What's kind of cool is that they tried to go for the whole black and white, classic film from the 30s or 40s ambiance, except they filmed, it was shot on videotape. So it looks really cheap. I kind of get what they were going for. They probably had enough of a budget to buy a hero sandwich at the deli. But once the movie starts to unfold, you've got all these people here talking to each other about, and you start to hear like all the backstory of all the characters, and you're like, well, it sounds like some of these people like maybe came from the same family, or they might have known each other, but they don't. And you start to see all these little connections between all the different people. And then, I don't know, maybe 3/4, and then you don't see any monsters. There's nothing going on except the camera's following all these people around, all this really bad, cheesy dialogue, and then totally hamming it up by Ron Chaney's character, the Dr. Bela Reinhardt. Then about 3/4 of the way through the film, you learn that his last name is really Frankenstein, not Reinhardt. Okay, there's the big reveal there. And then Bela, of course, was, and this is weird, he got his name from his grandfather, who was named Bela. Bela, the gypsy guy, bitten by a werewolf. Bela from Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, or no, Bela from the original Wolfman film, who bit Lon Chaney Jr. And then we find out that that Dr. Bela Reinhardt, Dr. Bela Frankenstein, actually is a werewolf. So at this point in the film, he goes and everybody's like, what's going on? What are we going to find out? Who inherits the fortune? The full moon rises. He turns into a werewolf right in front of all of them. And then we get this ridiculousness for about 10 or 15 minutes where they're all running around like a bunch of idiots around the castle trying to get away from him. And it's just totally ridiculous. Then after all this, he kills like half of them all in a matter of like 2 minutes. And then they wind up going downstairs to the basement. They break into this one room. He's chasing after them. And then lo and behold, there is the Frankenstein monster there. Meanwhile, they didn't talk about him the entire film. He's just down there in the basement. So he and the werewolf get into a WWE, AEW drag out wrestling fight where they're throwing each other all over the place, throwing fisticuffs and, throw downs and all sorts of stuff. It's actually pretty cool because I think one of the things that we always wish we got more of in Frankenstein versus the Wolfman is more of the monster battle at the end. So they actually are going at it for like 10 or 15 minutes. And then out of nowhere at the end, one of the surviving women is upstairs while the monsters are fighting downstairs. And there's like a knock at the door. She opens the door, and who's there? Dracula. But of course, he has to be invited in, which he gets invited in. And then in come his 3 lovely vampire ladies. And they go and they kill the last remaining woman, right? So basically, everybody's getting destroyed here and killed. Dracula goes downstairs, sees, I'm going to give away the ending here, guys. Goes downstairs, sees the 2 monsters fighting to the death. It's a pretty good fight, actually. And he basically interrupts them. What are you guys doing? And then the film ends. And it's like, okay. My guess is they wanted to make a sequel to this, but seeing as how low the budget was for this, I don't know if that was ever really going to happen. This is already 14 years ago. I kind of would love to see a sequel. And I think I remember reading originally back in the day when they released this that they were talking about it. But I mean, at this point, I doubt if it's ever going to happen. But I think the makeup for the werewolf is actually pretty cool. The makeup for the Frankenstein monster is pretty cool. The guy who plays Dracula, what is his name? Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
is actually an old special effects guy and did lots of makeup all throughout the years. And he looks a lot like Bela Lugosi. He tries to sound like Bela Lugosi. He apparently died right after the movie was made. So even if they wanted to do a sequel, they couldn't use him. So
just get the director's dentist.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think the first half of the movie is kind of boring and kind of a mess, but the last 20 minutes is so much fun. It completely redeems itself for me, other than the fact that they leave it on a total cliffhanger and all you want to do is see more, because I think, for so many of us Universal horror fans, it's like we want to see more of our classic monsters. And this, I think, was a fun homage to that. Bad acting and kind of weird plot notwithstanding, I think that the folks who made the film, I think, really have a love for the old classics, and it kind of shines through. But don't expect any 5-star classic here. But if you love the old Universal films, seeing the Frankenstein monster, the Wolfman, and Dracula in a film together is very, very cool. And I mentioned there's this old witch. She's kind of like the grandmother, and she's locked up in a room, and it's just kind of bizarre. And the 3 vampire women like look really bizarre. They kind of look like a cross between like a really bad creature from the Black Lagoon and Nosferatu. And this is one weird scene where all three of them are like kind of together and they face the camera in a really weird way. And you're like, oh, okay, they're kind of ugly. But yeah, fun film. Good drag out fight between the monster and the werewolf, which I think is pretty cool. They all get their licks in, and again, it looks really cheap, but it's fun. So
it sounds like their heart was in the right place.
It totally was, yeah, and that's why I kind of like, again, the first hour of the film is like, all right, this acting is terrible. Where'd they find these people? There is one actress who's pretty hot. She's got like long black hair, and she's pretty sexy in the film. And there's one scene where she's walking around in her negligee, and it's like, oh, okay, well there you go. That just livened things up a little bit. But most of the other folks in the movie are just ridiculously cheesy and bad actors, and Chaney's grandson is not a very good actor either, and he's just like kind of totally hamming it up. In the beginning of the film, he's like so understated and he talks so low, and just like his dialogue is just bad. And it's not till like right before he turns into the werewolf that he gets really animated and just starts having something to do, and he chews up a little bit of scenery. So yeah, fun film, not a classic, but I'm a big fan of the Universal horror film, so I totally love the ending. So.
That fellow Michael who played Dracula, yeah, he was a kind of like a semi-regular in the New York, Pennsylvania area. He used to appear at like Ron Adams' Monster Bash in full regalia. He had been a chiller a few times. And the other interesting point about that film, the fellow that played the manservant, the big butler.
Yes.
He was involved. He was killed at a horror convention out in Ohio, I believe.
Wasn't he the brother of the director or something like that?
Yeah. Something. And he was involved in the indie horror film circuit very heavily. And he did this thing as a role to play in it. But he was at a convention somewhere. I'm going to say Ohio. I'm fully certain. Hit and run in front of the hotel.
Oof.
Wasn't me.
I can't remember when you forget his name. It'll tell you. But it was a hit and run. Died instantly. And that was shortly after this film as well, as you said, with Michael who played. Jesus. The Dracula passed away shortly after that.
Yeah, John McGar, he plays Barlow. Mm-hmm. Barlow, the butler. He's a big hulking guy. Yeah.
That's a very expensive disc to find. It's out there, I think, on the internet. I don't know if it's the internet, but that disc goes for like $200 now because it was a real limited release.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. So yeah, fun stuff.
So, Mama. Go back around the same way. And all right, Davey, you thought your secret Satan was Jamie. Why and how sure were you?
I thought it might be because this being a film in production, Charles Band, Jamie and I both bought the kind of Charles Band box set that came out this year, The Empire of Screams from Arrow. So I just thought there was a connection there, and it made a bit of sense. So yeah.
You're right.
Woo!
I pretty much live in an arcade.
Yeah, made sense. 90s set, and yeah, I can imagine Jamie rocking to this in the 90s. So yeah, good stuff.
And I wanted to give you something with Q in it that maybe you haven't seen before.
Yeah, that was fun seeing John Delancey, and he's not got much to do, but he's great.
Greg, you thought yours was Dan?
Yes.
Why? How sure?
I don't know. It was strictly a guess. It was strictly a guess. I really wasn't sure, but my guess was with Dan.
You got it.
Yeah.
Well, like old married couples now, we know exactly what to do it. Right.
Chris, you thought yours was Davey. Why?
I didn't think it was Pete or Jamie because I got them previously.
You were right, the Davey.
How do we do? Does George pull names out of a hat, or what's going on here? How do we get each other's name?
I pick them, and I did make sure that everybody had a person that they didn't have before. But other than that, it was random.
Okay.
Jamie, you thought yours was Craig. Why?
Well, I'm not going to say the other two movies that were given to me because whoever gave it to me might want to reuse them. but one was from the 80s and a couple Italian ones. I'm like, Craig likes 80s movies. He likes Italian movies. And when I was talking, he was the only one pretending that he didn't see it. What was that called? I'm going to write that one down. Yeah. He probably seen it 17 times. So I'm going with him.
You're the first person that was wrong.
Oh.
What if I gave you a second guess?
I really never did see it. So. I'm telling the truth.
Only an idiot wouldn't have seen that.
All right, then I'm gonna go with. Well, it can't be. Was it Pete?
Got it.
All right, cool. I enjoyed that one.
I figured you would. It's a classic.
Dan, you said Craig. Why?
Well, for starters, two of the other three films that he had, the three films, starred a woman who was in an early part of their career. And every time he does a show, he seems to nail all the names of actresses that eventually become big stars or hotties. And I think the two films had two women that eventually moved on, were familiar in the genre. And that's why I thought it that way. However, that was the main thing I thought. And until tonight, and then when I was thinking maybe it was Chris, because of something he said, but that's why I went Craig first out the bat with the two things with the different women, and then seemed to be like something that like it's on Tubi, so Craig would probably have seen it on Tubi or one of those shows.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Oh,
you're welcome, Dan. You're welcome.
Thank you, Craig. Well, when Chris sat there and says, "Yeah, I showed it at the Hudson Valley Horror Show," I'm like, God damn it. You're right. He just pulled this out of his archive.
I'm glad you like that one. And I was actually just rewatching some of it last night myself to refresh my memory. And I was like, oh man, this is pretty
it's a
crazy.
fun one.
This is a hoot. Oh, the worst.
I've not seen Slithis. That's going on the list.
Hey, you thought
the movie opens up, which got me more confused. It's called Sylus on the box and the poster.
Yes,
and
good point.
It's called Spawn of the Slithis.
Spawn of the Slithis.
Yeah, and I'm going like, oh wait, is this? They send me the sequel by accident? Do I have to like retread and go back and figure out really what happened? It didn't matter.
The Slithis mythology is quite difficult to
But
get.
the woman who plays the journalism professor's girlfriend or whatever, she's pretty hot in that, you know.
Oh no, she is.
And that's a PG movie. Also, I was surprised. They
showed some breasts in the one the
18-year-old.
The 18-year-old, the tight bod. And the girlfriend at one point when he's talking about that whole big monologue I talked about with the professor saying, she's like sitting in the corner. She's starting to get like all hot and heavy listening to this. And then when her boyfriend says something along the lines of like, she's like, I don't want you pursuing this. This is insane. Like you're sleeping on the couch tonight because.
Well, I laughed too at the same part that you had mentioned where they're asking the scientist guy, well, yeah, what does this have to do with anything? And he's like, well, stay with me. This is part one of a longer story here. And I actually like just started laughing at that. Like,
and the used car salesman Eric Blowfield. That's who the guy reminded me of. This other doctor.
Pete, you thought yours was Dan, but wrong.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I guess what, a Davy then, right? No?
Nope. Chris.
Really?
Woo!
Well, the original assignment as it was given, I thought we were supposed to make it tailor-made to the person that was picked. So I'm like, holy shit, Pete is the biggest fan I know of the Universal Werewolf movies. I'm like, if he hasn't seen this is perfect for him.
Absolutely. Wow. I did not expect that. Yeah. I thought for sure that was Dan. Have you seen the film, Chris?
Well, George kept bugging me to be like, give me your picks. I was trying to watch it, but like you said, the beginning's kind of boring. 3 nights in a row, I fell asleep on it. So George kept asking me. So finally I'm like, oh, fuck it. Here's the movie. So I just was hoping the second half would be better.
But the fight scene with the Wolfman and Frankenstein,
which I never saw. I didn't make it.
It's worth the price of admission.
Yeah,
that's what everybody said, and that's why I did say to George. I don't know if he sent it to you, Pete. because they give it away. The guys in the YouTube comments, like the first line, they're like, "Oh man, the fight scene at the end is awesome," and I'm like, "Don't if you give it to Pete, tell him don't read the YouTube comments."
I mean, they even recreate the scene that is in one of the few fight scenes in the original Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, where Frankenstein like pushes this whole generator.
Yes.
They
Yes.
actually recreate something along that line.
And they got the Wolfman jumping up on the top, and he's like hanging from the ledge, and Frankenstein he turns around, there he is, jumps down. Yeah. I think that one of the towards the end of the fight, the monster gets him in like a chokehold, and he smashes him up against the wall a couple times. And then the wall caves in, and he goes and falls through the wall. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty.
How's the transformation? The Wolfman transformation?
It's okay. It's okay, but it's plainly obvious that the Ron Chaney guy, who they show him going through the transformation, and then they show the final makeup, and then as soon as he gets up, it's a different guy. And if you look at the cast, it's a total different guy who plays the werewolf the whole rest of the movie. He's big and brawny, and the Ron Chaney guy is like tiny and really thin. So
if my memory doesn't fail me, the Wolfman makeup is pretty much along the lines of Benicio del Toro's, kind of bulky.
It was like, it reminded me of a cross between that and Oliver Reed and Curse of the Werewolf, right? Somewhere in between. Pretty good. I thought it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean Ron Chaney, I don't know if he's still alive, but like Chiller Theater used to always get Sarah Karloff, Ron Chaney, and Bela Lugosi Jr., which I always thought was weird. Like, what are you going to sign a picture of your dad with your name or your dad's name? Like, I don't understand, but
yeah.
They used to also have Dwight Fry's son was at the shows. Remember that?
There you go. I mean, I would have loved to meet Christopher Lee, but I wouldn't give you a nickel for Christopher Lee Jr.'s autograph. So,
right.
But that's me.
Maybe it's the conversation people just wanted to have without the autograph.
And that could be. Yeah, that could be.
Do you have any tits in your movie, Chris?
The one I gave Pete?
No, the one you watched.
Oh, American Gothic. Unfortunately, no. But I was so angry at all the ladies. I'm like, I just fucking kill them already. Just put them to death.
I gave you that, Chris, because I picked 3 movies that I haven't bothered watching yet to find out if one of them might be worth watching.
I want to find if it's worth watching now.
Well, the other one you gave me was The Antichrist, which is an awesomely bad Italian knockoff of The Exorcist. So bad, I think I've bought it 3 times now. So that one is a lot of fun.
Yeah, just come out on Blu-ray, so...
Yeah.
And Dan, the other 2, I won't give the names, but the other 2 movies that I gave you are aces.
What? Yeah. No, I have to remember the name, but I remember looking at it and go, okay, it's got this actress, that actress. Oh, I know Keats. I know Craig's MO. So all right, I know. Thumbs up, go.
And I was going to recommend anybody to not yet purchase Manchester Morgue or Don't Open the Window, because that's one of those ones. I think Pete bought the last one. It's one of those ones where they did a 4K transfer but then downgraded it to Blu-ray, which I would assume, because it is such a great movie, that I would bet anything Shout Factory or someone, since there's already a 4K transfer, will put it on an actual 4K disc in 2024.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait.
That's why I've already bought it once on Blu-ray. I'm like, I'm not doing it again. I will wait till there's a 4K disc, which someone will do.
Yeah,
it looks
the Synapse do 4Ks?
Yeah, because they did the Demons set, didn't they? Demons 1 and 2 on 4K.
Yes, they did.
And
also,
Arrow did that here, so I wouldn't know that.
Dan, didn't they do the Argentos in America in 4K?
No.
Or is that Severin? Am I mixing
again? Arrow did those here.
Okay.
No, it's
I thought Synapse did the Demons 1 and 2 on 4K.
Yeah, for everybody watching, this is the
that's the one
with the
steelbook.
That was the last Blu-ray set, which was quite expensive.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous set. Love the steelbook inside.
I mean, that's one of those films that, like with Chris with Dawn of the Dead, I think I have the Anchor Bay. I have the initial one that came out in 2-disc DVD set or Blu-ray, and then the Synapse one. And I'll probably get it in 4K because it's some things are just
Really
worth
good.
the upgrade.
It is a classic for sure.
And you get full frontal in the beginning of that movie too, for no reason, just some woman running down the street. Completely.
It has like
70s, man.
Has the
Do that
autopsy,
today.
autopsy zombie.
Can't
which
do
is
that or show
wild.
smoking.
And of course, the breast removal, the mastectomy scene is pretty grim with the nurse.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Good atmosphere in that film too.
Very creepy, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it dubbed? Because sometimes their mouths were moving to the words, sometimes they weren't.
Like Italian films, they were all dubbed, even
Post-production,
so they were recorded
Yeah.
silently, basically.
Because that's Arthur Kennedy's voice who plays the cop.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's just an American actor that goes all the way back to the 30s and the 40s.
So even watching an English speaking actor, they would be dubbing themselves into
Isn't it
English.
Ray Lovelock is
Yes.
the main character.
He's the hero.
Isn't he English by
He is
birth?
English, and I thought
Yeah,
that was
but he
his voice.
Did a lot of
And
Spanish.
I thought it
films.
wasn't it originally a Spanish film, like a
It did a
Spanish?
Spanish.
It is a
film.
Spanish film, yeah.
No, it's a
That is
Spanish,
a Spanish film.
because the director is Jorge. He's Spanish. The director.
Yes.
And actually, that if you get that Synapse box, unless it comes out in 4K, it's got a oodles of great side stuff. I mean, documentaries, location
A
shots,
lot of special features.
lots of good interview with. I think it's an interview with Ray Lovelock as well. I think a few of the actors.
Yeah, it's he only really did that one great movie. What was his name? Jorge Grau or
Yes.
Yes.
yeah,
That's
something
it,
like that. But yeah, he felt like he should have been a big player, but
Well, it was kind of, Pete and Dan and myself did like a Dawn of the Dead episode quite a while ago. But it really is interesting that from Night of the Living Dead to Dawn of the Dead, there's like hardly any zombie movies other than, like Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and this one other movie, which is great.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think because it was a little ahead of its time, it got somewhat overlooked.
There's only a handful. There was that other film that came out of Canada that sat in the guy's house for years, only limited release.
Which one?
Oh God, it's not the Flesh Eaters. That's not it's something. The name.
and Amicus had done a couple as part of segments, but they tended to be voodoo zombies more than reanimated
yeah.
dead. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they're doing a re-release. Speaking of which, was 1960, which is considered the first like modern zombie film. Was The Dead One, 1961. That's a independent film that's been out there, and they're doing a big restoration on that at the moment as well.
Yeah, I think Radiance are putting that out. There we go.
All right, everybody. Secret Satan 2023 is complete.
It's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is fun.
I was
Good
kind
for
of excited
George.
for this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Hell of a
Me
job,
too.
George.
Yes.
Well done, George.
Coordinating.
Jorge.
Yes.
Thank you, George. We'll do this again. Maybe we won't wait till next Christmas to do this. I could have sworn we did one around
I can't remember.
Valentine's Day.
No,
Maybe we talked about it.
in February, we did what we're watching type of thing. I think in February we did like a what we're watching
Yeah, I don't know.
lately.
Anyway, we'll revisit this again at some point before next or maybe we did two.
Well,
We
yeah,
did.
I don't know.
Did we, I think you may be thinking of we did the shark one, which is a bit similar.
Yes, I think that's what I'm thinking of. Yes, we did
Shark grab bag, whatever it's
Yes,
called.
we did that's what I'm thinking of. Okay, we
Yeah.
did the shark thing, but it wasn't a Secret Satan.
I only know this because
Sharking.
I only know this because I keep a spreadsheet.
We
Secret,
can do it.
Secret Satan
My
2
black-
was October 27th of 2022.
Wow.
We can do it in February and call it My Bloody Valentine.
Or halfway to Secret Satan.
Yeah, there you go. We'll figure it out. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. This is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together, all the damn time.
Damn
Don't touch
time.
that dial because we're going to have a bonus episode coming up for you guys. A quick little review of Godzilla -1. So stay tuned for that here on the Monsters Den. Till then, for Jamie Laszlo, Dan Brown, David Gallagher, Chris Allo, Craig Kaminsky, and our special guest host, Mr. George Lemay, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody, here at the Monsters Den. See you real soon. Bye-bye.
Hi.